Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Bill Brown, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and then we want to talk about Frontside. We want to talk about all the amazing things that you're doing to be active in the GWAT community and support a lot of people like Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, who, as we tape this, is up for confirmation, right? You were a big part of helping get Pete Hegseth through, who's, I believe, is a warrior's warrior. You've heard me say that. And I believe the person to run the Department of Defense. So thanks again for being here, bud.
Hey, it's an honor to be here, Mike. Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate you. So where were you born?
I was born in South Jersey, Voorhees, New Jersey. I came from a blue-collar family. Like a lot of men and women in the military, I came from a strong family of military service. Every male member in my family, all my uncles, my great-grandpops, my grandfathers, and my father all served. So that had a big impact on my life. And, I rough and tumble in some blue-collar towns in South Jersey. When I was younger, it kind of had my compass wasn't geared right. I had a lot of different reasons for that. I think one of the reasons was some of that music that was being portrayed out in the 80s, 90s, that hardcore rap music. I think it portrayed a lot of misplaced perspectives and values that the record companies made a lot of money off of, but got a lot of people trapped in this type of ideology that wrecked a lot of families. And I found myself in making some poor decisions, a few fights here and there, wound up getting into detention center. The Navy definitely saved my life. Yep.
That's awesome to hear, buddy. So growing up where you grew up in South Jersey, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
What was my favorite thing about South Jersey? To be honest, I grew up in the small river towns between Philadelphia and Trenton. And so they got a lot of these small river towns, very tough river towns, working class families, blue collar poor in some of them. I graduated from Burlington City High School, which is an Abbott school district, which means they receive additional state funding because basically their scores are so low, and the majority of their students come from relatively poverty-stricken families. But for me, the best thing was actually the fact that you had so many small different river towns, because it was kind of close, and I could go to different parties and meet different girls. And I think that was one of the coolest things. One of the toughest things about it though too is because guys are pretty territorial, and when you're going to the next town's parties and talking to their girls,
you're meeting their girls, right?
Yeah. So it's natural tension for young guys, and it happens. Sometimes it gets out of control. And yep.
So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Growing up, I think like a lot of things, there's different variables that have different impacts. I think one of my heroes was, I grew up in Willingboro for a long period of my youth. And Carl Lewis was from Willingboro.
Ooh.
Have such a world-class, phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
It kind of was pretty wild because, you're running on the same track that he trained on.
Yeah, that had to have been wild.
Yeah, I think he had a big impact on me. There's different individuals that have had an impact on me. I think actually one of them was once when I was in a detention center, and there was a black guy there that came from New York, and he was upset about some of the ways that the guards were treating some of the young guys in there.
Hmm.
And he actually organized, I'll never forget it. It was the first time I really saw real advocacy. And basically they have like a common area where they have the TV and kind of like people sit and hang out, I guess is the right way. And he basically got people around, was advocating, why they should make different changes. And one of the things I saw there that had a big impact on me was, as far as down the road,
Mm-hmm.
is especially when I got out of the military and I started advocating for veterans at Rutgers University,
Mm-hmm.
was I could see, because I saw a couple of things. One was the worst part about being in an institutional system
Mm-hmm.
is that, to me, it was dangerous, especially if you're white, you have a target on your back 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But the worst thing was you're surrounded by, to be honest with you, a bunch of people who their perspectives are so not in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And just the conversation and things like that, it's like, Jesus Christ, like some of them couldn't know how to read and they would ask me to help them write letters and things like this. And I was like, wow, like there's a huge, end of the power curve type of
Mm-hmm.
huge, sample there. And when you're surrounded by that, I think that's the worst. And I think that's one of the best things about being in the SEAL teams or being at a good law firm or being in law school is the people you're surrounded with yourself, they actually make you better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the adverse in those type of situations. But in this situation, what I learned from this young guy was when he was articulating his reasons why he was upset, and he compared them with how they were treated in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and why basically having more workout time or more free time, or basically why they should be able to have more times on the phones or things like that. He was able to articulate his reasons in a way that I could see even with the guards, it resonated.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, one of the things, like when I led the march for Pete Hegseth, or even when I stacked the room, the Dickerson Senate office building with
Mhm.
veterans, I learned a couple things. And one of the things I learned is you hold the moral high ground,
Mm-hmm.
and two, you articulate your reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the big takeaways, at least from me in January 6th, was I can understand why lots of Americans have serious questions regarding the electoral system, right? And whether whether it's been corrupted to some degree or not.
Mhm.
I think there should be congressional investigations into that. I don't see why reasonable Americans can't advocate for that.
Yeah.
I think what happens is when you start acting the fool, people stop thinking about and considering what your perspective is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was a unique experience that I had when I was younger that I think helped me out initially in my advocacy at Rutgers University. Because in that environment, it's totally distinct an environment where you're incarcerated and it's an institutionalized system. In that environment, though, it has some similarities where in that environment, there's huge groupthink regarding the woke ideology.
Mhm.
But the decision makers, they hold themselves out to be intellectuals, right?
Mhm.
Because that's supposed to be the key currency in academia. And so one of the things I found when I was able to have the greatest success for basically I was able to get various initiatives for veterans on all of the Rutgers campuses. They have a veteran service director, a veteran student club, veterans lounges. They offer their resources that they have available for veterans on their websites. And I was able to get a lot of this done in an atmosphere where it's very controversial and adversarial to veterans,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it was at the time where they still had don't ask, don't tell policy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of academia was strongly opposed to the military because of that.
Yeah.
But when I was able to kind of follow that blueprint, like I'm going to hold the moral high ground, but I'm going to articulate my reasons. And I did things where I kind of took it off the box. Like I organized well, the first thing I did is I was inspired by this other Navy SEAL named David Goggins. And we served together in Iraq, but we also went through Hell Week together in basic underwater demolition SEAL training. We were in the same boat crew. And when I got out, it was a very hard transition process for me. I went from, I was a joint terminal air controller where I'm basically coordinating and stacking aircraft
Mm-hmm.
and telling them where they should release ordnance, how they should ingress, what azimuths, how they should egress, what azimuths, what altitudes they need to fly out of, what their playtime is like. And I went from that type of having that type of responsibility, or to be sincere, like I was a lead breacher in my SEAL platoon.
Mm-hmm.
I literally made hundreds of charges that were used throughout Iraq. And to that type of responsibility, to all of a sudden I'm in a community college with a bunch of very liberal professors, very heavily influenced students in New Jersey, which is a strictly blue state. And they had a lot of adversarial and misguided perspectives of honorable military service.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the, you think about it, less than 7% of the American population has served.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you go to academia, with their perspectives on military service. So I absolutely ran into headway there,
Mm-hmm.
but I was able to do big things because I wound up studying like Martin Luther King,
Mm-hmm.
Gandhi. And so like I had organized a 65-mile run for veterans. I started the first scholarship at Rutgers University called the Veterans for Education Scholarship.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome.
Thank you. I also started the first student group for veterans there since the Vietnam era called Veterans for Education. And what I did is with another veteran named Efra Gonzalez, we followed David Goggins' example because I saw that he ran through Death Valley like this ultrasound, like 160 miles, I believe.
Yeah. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And he raised a lot of money for the Wounded Warriors Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So what I found was that he used his physical attributes to send a message,
Mm-hmm.
right? Similar like when Gandhi walked across India, for basically in protest to the salt monopoly that the British had.
Mm-hmm.
Or similar to some of the stuff that MLK did.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that and it's similar to what I did in Washington recently with SEALs and veterans, where we marched for peace, is we held the moral high ground, but we sent a message.
Yeah.
And here, what I did is the decision making was Rutgers in the state. Rutgers University is broken up into 3 main campuses in New Jersey. It's the State University of New Jersey. You have the Camden campus, which is down south. You have the Newark campus, and then you have the New Brunswick campus. And the New Brunswick campus is the biggest campus and has several campuses. And it's where all the decision making is.
Yeah.
So I was down at South Jersey in Camden, right by Philly, but I ran from Camden to New Brunswick straight with another veteran, Efra Gonzalez. I raised about $20K for veterans, started an endowed scholarship there. I had a member named Jeremy Kane that got killed in Afghanistan. And so we renamed it the Jeremy Kane Veterans for Education Scholarship to give him a little love. But by running from Camden to where the decision-making process was in New Brunswick, I got the decision makers' attention at the university. Mm-hmm. And then I organized a couple congressional debates, specifically the largest which in the 3rd congressional district, which was a heavily populated district. It was a very contested district between Republicans and Democrats. Mm-hmm. And I ran it between a guy named Michael Myers, who was the executive director of Lockheed Martin at the time, and John Adler, who was a Harvard lawyer. And so I got a lot of media publicity from the Philadelphia media markets. And it was strictly, I literally wrote every question in that debate. And basically it was strictly on Iraq and Afghanistan issues. And then basically I had these congressmen talking and addressing issues that I wanted them to talk about. And the Rutgers had never seen anything like that before and since. And so I was able to influence, local and federal leaders and, some of the ideas that I was promoting. And some of those ideas was, getting tax incentives for businesses that hire veterans, things such and such. And so I kind of, I have been blessed. When I think about guys in the SEAL teams that I serve with, I really served with some really astounding Americans. And I'll just name a few. Now, David Goggins is a renowned SEAL, and he's really renowned for his physical attributes that he's done. And he really represents the community in a great way because it's all about self-improvement. And I'm totally about. I also served with Chris Kyle in my boat crew in Hell Week.
Ooh, wow.
So I got David Goggins.
That's quite a group, man.
Yeah, David Goggins and Chris Kyle in my boat crew.
Wow.
Now, imagine, like, a lot of people know the intensity of David Goggins, but they don't know Chris Kyle. And Chris Kyle was intense too, but he operated way differently when he was going through SEAL training than, like, he was very much like the silent professional, like totally focused, but not flamboyant, I guess is the right word. But
he was very quiet, huh?
Yeah. Yes.
Very directed, though. He knew exactly where he was going and how he was going to get there, right? He just didn't talk a lot about it. He just got after it and got it done.
Right. Like he 100% putting in the work, you know what I mean? And letting that speak.
Yeah.
And so, but just imagine being around those two guys when you're a young guy going through training. Like, that absolutely is going to have it's going to leave an impression on you.
Yeah.
100% it did. And I served with a lot of other beautiful men too, that absolutely, had like big impacts on me. One of the guys out there, a lot of people don't know, is Stephen Redbow or Lance Redbow. And for a while, he had the most confirmed kills. He was a sniper, but he was also my senior chief in Iraq. I had another guy named Mikel Vega. He became an actor. Runs something called Vital Warrior now, which is it's a common denominator I see with a lot of guys when they get out. They go beyond to help other guys through that transition process. That's what he's doing out there in LA. So I've been blessed to to be around a lot of beautiful men who have done a lot of great things for our country.
What made you decide to go to Rutgers? Well, actually, let's go back. I know your family has a history of serving. And by the way, thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done to keep us safe. So I know that it's a family history. I get that part. What was it that made you join the Navy? And then specifically, what was it that made you join the SEALs?
Well, there's a couple things to this. One was the Navy. My pappy was a World War II veteran.
There you go.
And Gerald Herman Bridges, is there anybody wants to look it up. So he fought out in the Pacific, and he actually had one of his ships that got hit by a kamikaze pilot. And so that had a big impact on me. But one of the the World War II veterans, they didn't talk much about their service.
No.
And he used to have so one of the things my pappy did and my grandmas, they grew up in the Great Depression when they were younger than World War II. And because of that experience, they were very good at saving, extremely good at saving and investing. Now, he worked at when he got out, like a steel mill in PA, but my grandma, Betty Bridges, she actually worked at AT&T and very good at saving money. And they winded up moving out of Willingboro, and they got a place out in the Pine Barrens. He built his own house. Imagine how many people do that. Built his own house, built his own barn, leveled out the trees so he could have land for his horses to graze. And he used to have this big window out the where the TV living room was. And he had this big leather chair. In his leather chair, you could watch the TV, or you could turn around and look out the big window and see all his horses grazing in the back.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I asked him about his service, and he just told me he didn't. I'm not sure what battle it was, but he just told me like the sun rising, and you could see all these Japanese planes coming at streaking down at him. And he didn't talk too much of it. Very briefly, that's the only time he talked about it. But that had a big impact on me. And my grandfather, Bill Brown, he served during the Korean War. And that he actually didn't go into Korea. He was actually a very good athlete. He actually was involved with the Army's baseball team. My father served during the Vietnam War, but he was in the Army, but he didn't go to Vietnam. He was a mechanic, and he got to serve in the Air Force. I think the big reason for the Navy was actually because of my pappy, because he was a World War II veteran. And I originally want to be a Marine, but the Marines, because I got in trouble when I was younger, I was in and out of detention center a couple times for fighting stupid stuff.
Yeah.
I can't believe they didn't take me, but they didn't. And to be honest, I don't know if it was racial or not, but Willingboro is all black, and the recruiters out of the Marine recruiting station were all black, and they were kind of harsh about the way they, basically turned me down. But the Navy, I was. So I didn't think I was going to be able to serve like everybody in my family. So what happened was I was out of high school. I was working a couple jobs, living on my own, trying to make money for college. And I had a girlfriend, and we were going to a party dressed up like a Halloween party like Raggedy Ann and Angie. And like she had me like turn right real fast. And I winded up gutting my car that I saved up for to buy on these tracks. And luckily I got it out of there before the train was coming. It was like a wild scene. So at that point I'm going to college, and my car's not, in the shop.
Yeah.
And I'm riding my bike to early in the morning to college, and then I was pumping gas station in between the main thoroughfare between Trenton and Philadelphia. And this gas station kept getting robbed at night. And so they actually had me work like the 0 dark 30 shift. And I'm riding my bike back from work, and it was so cold. I thought I was going to get frostbite on my private parts. And I was like, Jesus, I can't keep doing this. And I drove by the recruiting station, and I was like, well, let me give this another shot. And I talked to the Navy recruiter, and I was honest with everything, and he's like, well, and they gave me a waiver.
Wow.
And that saved my life, because sometimes I think for especially kids that come from kind of like poor backgrounds or rough and tumble neighborhoods, sometimes all you really need is to get out of there, because it's kind of like the crabs holding the crabs back.
Yep.
And a lot of the guys I was hanging out with weren't necessarily bad guys, but when we were together, we were just making some really bad decisions.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Navy, that's why I went to Navy. Navy 100% saved my life, and I'm very grateful.
What made you decide to go into the SEALs? It's different for everybody, right? Everybody has their own reasoning. I've had Navy SEALs on before, and we have their life stories, right? But it's literally different for everybody. So what was it that made you decide you wanted to do that?
So it wasn't like it is now, where it's like a household name. To be sincere, like I grew up in Browns Mills for a while too, which is right by Fort Dix and McGuire. It's another very poor blue collar town. And so I was around military growing up.
Mhm.
Never heard of the Navy SEALs.
Mhm.
Never knew about them until actually I was in boot camp. So I'm in boot camp, and in the first part of boot camp, you can't talk. And the first couple weeks, and when you're eating chow at the galley, and you have these TVs up there, and they're playing different things, kind of like a lot of military history.
Mm.
And then they kind of display different Navy units, and one of
Mhm.
them was the SEAL teams.
Mhm.
And they had a couple guys like running on the beats, and I was always pretty athletic. They had the guys doing the O course, jumping out of airplanes on these really fast boats that kind of reminded me of Miami Vice.
Mhm.
And I think that's what had the biggest impact for me.
It just
And
looked
then,
cool.
oh, cool.
Yeah, there you go.
And so the couple guys came into our boot camp division, and they said you could try out for it. And I was with a couple other guys anyway, working out late at night when other guys were trying to, just ready to get to sleep, and like doing pull-ups off the stalls, push-ups, sit-ups, leg levers on our own anyway, as a way to kind of like decompress the stress of boot
Mhm.
camp. And so I was doing that anyway with a group of guys, and that same group of guys and I tried out. We all failed, but I was like, the process took like 3 hours. You just had to get up a little earlier than everybody else,
Mhm.
and then you would meet up with your boot camp division. So no one said you couldn't come back. So I just kept coming back. It was a great workout. And finally, one of the instructors was like, you're not taking the test today. And instead of kicking me out, he actually taught me how to do a modified breaststroke. And and then the next time I took it, I passed. And yeah.
Okay, hold on. You know I'm going to ask you, right?
Yeah.
You know I'm going to ask you because I can't help myself. Okay, all right. So you're in boot camp.
Yeah.
You hear about this, you learn about it.
Yeah.
You decide to test. You
Yeah.
don't pass.
Mm-mm.
Nobody said that you couldn't go back, so you go back again.
Right.
So instead of what most people would do, see, this is the thing that makes you so much more exceptional, okay? Is most people, honestly, I'm being honest, okay? Most people would just go cry in their pillow, okay? And they wouldn't even think about doing it again. You, on the other hand, were never told that you couldn't go back, so you're just going back, right? You're just going to figure this out. So you go back. How many times do you end up going back?
I failed 3 times.
You failed 3 times. So
Yeah.
you kept going, right?
Right.
By the way, I think this is an important life lesson, Bill. That's why I want to talk about it for a second, because here's the thing. There are people that are listening to this podcast,
Yeah.
okay? And you're inspiring and motivating them. We know that from the feedback we're getting from our listeners, that one of the reasons, like, there's a thing in the podcast world called impactful listens, and it's the percentage of listens that stay for 75% or more of the podcast episode. We average 30 or 45 minutes to an hour, so we're not short in terms of time frame. Our percentage is 82%, and I believe the reason for that, from what we're hearing, is they're hearing your life story and the lessons that you've learned in life. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.